All right, in this video, we're going to talk about this in-class problem. It says, write a program that declares and initializes 4 ArrayLists. An ArrayList of strings of length 4, an ArrayList of doubles of length 3, an ArrayList of ints of length 8,000. Initialize all of the array elements or ArrayList elements to 32, and an ArrayList of myPoint objects of length 3. All right, see Chapter 6, Practice Problem Solutions. The program should also print out the array list of strings and myPoint objects. Okay. All right, so start a new Java class. So public class. Declare initialize array lists and add a main method public static void main string args Okay, so we want to declare 4 ArrayList, an array list of strings of length 4. All right, so to do that, we are going to have to add our import up at the top, import java.util.ArrayList. All right, and then declare a new array list. So we would put array list, and then in angle brackets put string, give a name to the array list. Then the assignment operator, then new, then array list string again, and then the open and close parentheses, that's for the constructors. All right, so let's take a look then. So that gives us an empty array list of strings. We want length 4, right? So just add 4 strings to that. All right, so now we have an array list of strings of length 4, and we'll print this out. All right, and so there's our array list of strings. Okay, next up we have an array list of doubles of length 3. All right, so declare another array list. So here we want the array list to have type double. Remember, we can't use a primitive type directly. We have to use its associated wrapper class. So the associated wrapper class for type double is double with a capital D. All right, so that will declare the array list, which is empty, and then we want to add 3 doubles in there. Even though you are using the associated wrapper class, you can just type these in as if they were primitives. and then Java will do the convert them to doubles with a capital D, right, for you. All right, and then we need to print out that array list. All right, there we go. All right, next up is an array list of ints of length 8,000. And what we want to do is initialize all of the array list elements to 32. Okay, so to create an array list of integers or ints, right, we would have to use the wrapper class for int, right, which is integer. Okay, so that sets up an empty array list of integers. All right, so 8,000 is a lot. So what we'll need to do is set up a for loop, right, to do that. The for loop is exactly the same as the for loop that we use to process arrays. So hopefully you work through those examples, because you will see these again. All right, and so in this case we want to just add a bunch of 32s, right, to that 8,000 times, and then print that out. Okay, so there we go. All right, so next is an array list of myPoint objects of length 3, right? And the note here says to see chapter 6 practice problem solutions. That's where the myPoint class is located. So just copy and paste that file into your file wherever you're working. I believe it's already here, yes. So I already have myPoint.java here, but if you know, wherever you're working through this, just go to Bitbucket and get that class out, or download it and then copy it over to whatever directory that you're working in. Is the easiest way to handle that. Okay, so we want to set up an array list of myPoint objects. So we would do that, you know, just exactly the way that we have been setting up anything else, right? An array list of any other type. So that part's exactly the same. Array list, then the type goes of the elements goes in here, a name that you choose, the equal operator, the new keyword, then again array list and whatever type, and then open and close parentheses, which, right, really this entire expression is the call to the constructor, right, in the array list class. Okay, so now what we want to do is to add how many is it? 3 myPoint objects. Okay, all right, so to do that, right, what we would do is, unlike here on these other types for string, right, we could just put a string literal in the add as the argument of the add method, or a double literal, or an int literal. Here we have to create an object, right? So this is going to be myPoint objects. So we're going to use the new keyword to do that, and then we're going to call the constructor for the myPoint object. Going and looking at the myPoint object, there's 2 constructors, right? This constructor has no parameters, right, and sets x and y to 0, 0. This one sets x and y to whatever the value of the parameters are. So you can use either one of those. I'm just going to use the first one where I just specify these. And just make up numbers. All right, and I want to print out the array lists of my point objects. All right, you can see it prints those out. Remember, right, it does also use the toString, right, of the my point object when you print out an array list of these objects, right? So that's why it prints so nicely like this, because this has a nice toString already associated with it. There will be certain times on the tests when I ask you to print one per line of these, so you need to be able to do that. You can do that with a standard for loop. That same for loop that we are using to process arrays, right? We can process array lists with it just as well as we can with arrays. The one difference being that with ArrayList, it's points.size and then open and close parentheses, as opposed to points.length, right, for an array. If you want these printed one per line, right, then what you can do is, println, and then it would be points.get I. Okay. So this would access or reference, right, the ith element, right, of the array list and print it out. So then you can see, right, it'll print these out one per line like this. Okay. So I definitely will ask you this on the third test or final exam on how to do that at some point. There's also something else I want to show you called the enhanced for loop. So you can see the result of the enhanced for loop is exactly the same as the result of the standard loop that we've been doing. All right, so how the enhanced for loop works, right, is here what I want to do is I have an array list of my point objects that I want to reference, right, in a loop like this. Okay, so what I can do, right, how you would set this up is that this first expression inside the for loop would be the type of the elements in the array list. Okay, so here, right, this array list is an array list of my point objects. Then make up a name, right? So this is like a variable name. So I just called it point, right? You can call it anything you like. All right, so you can call it Bob if you like, and then you can change this to Bob over here. Okay. So this is a variable that you make up, right? And then there's the colon, right? And then this is the name of the array list where you want to take those elements from. In this case, it's points. Okay. And so what will happen is that when this loop starts off, right, it will take the very first thing that's in this array list points and put it in the variable point, and then it will execute the loop body. All right. Once it goes through the loop body, then it will take the next element that is in the array list and put it in this variable point. Right, and then repeat this loop over and over again. So this is just a kind of a bonus for people who watch to the end of the video here about how to use the enhanced for loop. It's just kind of nice and simpler syntax than this loop. A lot of other newer languages have this type of loop, and so they just decided to add it to Java, and it's really good for quick, simple loops. like the kind where you're printing things, but you can still use this loop to accomplish everything as well. Okay. All right, and that is it for this video.